Running for office during a global pandemic, and all while a devastating derecho ravages the cities and rural communities of eastern Iowa. We'll dive into the issues in Iowa's 1st Congressional District with Democrat Abby Finkenauer and Republican Ashley Hinson here at Iowa PBS for this special live Iowa Press debate.
Funding for Iowa Press was provided by Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation, the Associated General Contractors of Iowa, the public's partner in building Iowa's highway, bridge, and municipal utility infrastructure.
Iowa PBS is supported in part by Wells Fargo. Fuel Iowa is a voice and a resource for Iowa's fuel industry. Our members offer a diverse range of products, including fuel, grocery, and convenience items. They help keep Iowans on the move in rural and urban communities. Together, we fuel Iowa.
I'm a dad.
I am a mom.
I'm a kid.
I'm a kid at heart. I'm a banker.
I'm an Iowa banker.
No matter who you are, there is an Iowa banker who is ready to help you get where you want to go. Iowa Bankers, allowing you to discover the genuine difference of Iowa banks.
For decades, Iowa Press has brought you political leaders and newsmakers from across Iowa and beyond. Live from Iowa PBS studios in Johnston, Iowa, this is a special Iowa Press debate featuring candidates in the 1st Congressional District. Here is moderator David Yepsen.
Election 2020 is an unprecedented time for Iowans in the 1st Congressional District. A months-long global pandemic mixed with a massive natural disaster that swept across Iowa only weeks ago. Tonight, we'll focus on the issues confronting Iowans and the candidates seeking the U.S. House seat in a district that includes the communities of Waterloo, Marshalltown, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, and many rural communities in the northeast quadrant of Iowa. We're hosting this debate with increased public health precautions, with a minimal staff joining us inside an empty 300-person auditorium at Iowa PBS studios. And all of us here on set are separated by plexiglass barriers. The candidates joining us are Republican State Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion and Democratic incumbent U.S. Representative Abby Finkenauer of Cedar Rapids. Welcome to you both. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Joining us in tonight's debate questioning is James Lynch, political writer for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids, and Kay Henderson, news director for Radio Iowa.
One of the most pressing issues right now in the 1st District for many of the voters there is recovery from the Derecho. And a presidential disaster declaration has been declared for much of the district, giving people, homeowners and businesses access to a variety of federal aid. Abby Finkenauer, you've been critical of the federal response. What would you want to do differently, and why are you the best person to represent the district during this recovery period?
Yeah, so we were on the ground, obviously, following the derecho as my new husband and I now live in Cedar Rapids. And I knew right away that we were going to need all the help we could get. So immediately I asked the governor to ask for an expedited presidential disaster declaration, knowing that it was going to be a really long road and we needed help and we needed it now. And so that's something that I was proud to have called for early. But, you know, eventually it did come about a week and a half later. We were grateful that the president did decide to declare that, and also for the other counties as well. It's one of those things where when you're looking at the devastation of folks not having ice to keep breast milk cold, not having gas for their generators to be able to keep their refrigerators running, keep their kids fed. There were a lot of immediate needs, and they just were not getting met at that moment. But now that we have the presidential declaration, we have FEMA in, and one of the things we did actually on Friday was actually have some of the folks from FEMA invited local leaders there to make sure that we were hearing directly from the people who are on the ground. One of the things that continues to come up is housing and security issues. So we continue to push FEMA, and we'll continue to do the same also with the state level as well to make sure that we get those needs met and get them met as soon as possible, because there's a lot of folks who are getting worried as it's going to start getting cold. holdout,
Actually, Hinson,
obviously.
same question to you.
Yeah, well, and my family was impacted like everybody else's. I think that's the story here is that no family was left untouched. I was in the basement with my kids and my husband as we were dealing with the derecho, and as we emerged as a neighborhood, it was very clear that we had a lot of work ahead of us. And I was on the phone with the governor that afternoon advocating that she get to my district and my legislative district right away so that she could see the damage firsthand, because it was very clear to me what we were going to be dealing with was a long path ahead. So we absolutely got that gubernatorial disaster declaration, that state disaster declaration the next day, which I think was incredibly fast, and I'm happy about the speed there. And then, as the Congresswoman referenced, by the next week, the president was on the ground here. I was able to advocate at the table there for additional aid for our communities, and I think that we've done that. The president delivered on the aid that he promised, and we're going to keep advocating for additional aid so that our families can recover.
What's needed now? I mean, we've got the disaster declaration. What's next? What does the district need? What do people in Cedar Rapids and Marshalltown need to help them move forward?
Well, I think the number one thing that I discovered was food insecurity was a problem, not only just as the derecho was passing through and power was out, but going forward as families' lives have been completely disrupted. Food insecurity is now affecting families that had been secure before and had been living their lives like normal, and then all of a sudden they had this devastating incident happen. And so I think what we saw happen there was this bubbled up, and that's going to be the issue that I think many families are going to deal with. Shelter. I had a number of my constituents who all of a sudden found themselves with a gaping hole in their roof and no place to live, and they were being told, you have to get out right now. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, is making sure we have enough places for people to live. Insurance companies are following through on what they've promised in their premiums, and people have the resources they need to recover.
Is there something that Congress needs to do now at this point?
So one of the things that we've been hearing a lot from constituents, both obviously the food insecurity issue is one that we saw really those first couple weeks after immediately. I mean, that Saturday, I know we were trying to just feed people because they didn't have anything left in their refrigerator. That was one of the most heartbreaking moments I've ever had, is realizing that you might not have enough to get people's bellies full. And that's something that I know we really continue to have to work on. But the other thing, specifically for homeowners who even have insurance, tree removal is going to be a huge issue still. I mean, these are trees that are 150, 200 years old that came down. This has never happened before in Iowa like this. And so making sure that we have that supplemental there, whether that's working with the city to make sure that FEMA is covering the tree removal, or whether that's looking at a possible supplemental package down the road.
One of the things that was discovered was many people now realize how old the power structure is in terms of utilities and power lines. Ashley Hinson, what sort of action would you take as a member of Congress in rebuilding the infrastructure of public utilities, including broadband? Because many people could not make calls, they couldn't have their kids go to school because they didn't have broadband access in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, we experienced that in our home too, so I know firsthand the challenges that a family would face. I had to drive. I was in quarantine myself, so I actually had that added challenge, I guess you'd say, of being in quarantine and dealing with the derecho. But I had to drive in my van about 2 miles north of my house to get to a point where I had service, to be able to get a call out, to get an email out. So I think the number one thing I would do is prioritize strategic investments in infrastructure, looking at the research to make sure that we are investing that last dollar and that last mile to get the broadband exactly where it needs to go. It's expensive to lay the ground, to lay the fiber, to lay all of these lines that our linemen did an incredible job of doing, and I want to thank them right away here tonight. It's Labor Day. They have labored a lot over the past few months or past few weeks to get the job done, and I think that we need to have their backs in making sure that we can do that going forward in a safe manner.
Do you continue to depend on the private sector to provide broadband, or do we need a public utility for broadband in the country?
I think we've got a great public-private partnership going here in Iowa. I've served on the RIF committee, the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund committee, and the Transportation Infrastructure Capitals committee. We have a great program where we can pair the funding with people who have a project that's shovel-ready, ready to go. So we're making sure tax dollars are spent as efficiently as possible. That's the kind of model that I see going forward being effective.
Abby Finkenauer, during the presidential campaign, you had some Democratic candidates say it's time to make broadband a public utility. Is that your position?
Well, from what I've seen on the ground, and specifically how Iowa's been doing it, our RECs do an incredible job, but they do need extra funding and the grants to actually continue to get it done. So one thing in Congress that I know has always been a priority since I got there was looking at broadband and making sure that we have the right investments in the right places. And what we realized is that we didn't even have the most up-to-date maps when it came to where folks actually needed connectivity. And you might be in a neighborhood where it shows that one house has connectivity, but then it says the whole neighborhood does because one house does. And we know that's not accurate. And so that's actually one of the first bills that I worked on as well, was to actually deal with this issue. And then the FEC decided to actually deal with that and changed how they were mapping broadband and connectivity. We actually brought one of the commissioners here to Iowa to talk to folks, whether it was our teachers, our healthcare professionals, our business owners, about why broadband was so important. And it's also something we have to get right, not just after this derecho, but also after this pandemic as well.
Congress is gridlocked on the next phase of pandemic relief. Democrats in the House have proposed about $3 trillion more in the next phase. The Trump administration and Republicans say $1 trillion will be enough. Ashley Hinson, how big should that package be? What should be included? Should it include that $600 a week in unemployment, another round of PPP for businesses?
Mm-hmm. I think the PPP has been incredibly effective for the business owners I've talked with. They've used that to keep their doors open in a very, very challenging time for our country. We look at the relief that has come, the $600 a week that went away, and the president actually had to take action because of that gridlock, and I applaud the administration for doing that. I think we need to be looking at, as we're making those investments, let's look at some of the data first to make sure that the funds actually reach the places they needed to reach. I did some checking on the hospitals today, for example, because they did receive a huge amount of the money that came from those relief packages. And some of them are saying, yep, we're absolutely fine on the PPE and having the resources we need to be able to get that out. Others are saying we might need some additional help going forward.
$3 trillion sounds like a lot of money, and that's about what's been spent so far, I believe. Do we need that much more, Abby Finkenauer, to get the job done?
Well, we have some priorities we have to get done, and we need to do it without however much it's going to cost, whether it is state and local funding that desperately needs to get done right now. I mean, that's our firefighters, our police officers, our utility workers that we know are desperately needed right now and always have been in our cities, but we have to make sure that we backfill those dollars because our cities, our counties, and our states are losing millions of dollars right now, and it's going to put even public safety at risk if we don't backfill the states right now and these communities. And then on top of it, we also have to make sure that we help our essential workers and make sure that they have paid time off as well and also have hazard pay.
Your party leaders differ in Washington.
Yeah.
Right? Democrats are asking for $3 trillion. The Republican leaders are asking for $1.5 trillion. Is that an issue difference here in this campaign? If a voter wants to see a lot of money spent, they should vote for you, Abby Finkenauer. If they want to be more frugal, they should vote for you. Is that a fair way to decide? I
don't think that's it at all. I think I want to see money targeted in the best way to get the solutions that we need. And I think we do need to be cognizant of the fact that we don't just have an endless pot of money here to work from. And I'm cognizant of that, and that's how I've operated in the Iowa House. Our state is the #1 state to be able to handle these disasters because we've had strong leadership in handling our budget.
Abby Finkenauer.
Well, when it comes to how much actually needs to be spent, again, we have to have the priorities first, and I think they should be narrower than what we've seen even come out of the House. It's one place that I've actually differed with my leadership on because of the fact that I wanted to get something that we can find common ground on. I mean, the reality is both Democrats and Republicans in D.C. need to get out of their corners and get something done. And that's something we've been advocating for since day one, uplifting the story so people actually know what's happening on the ground. Because at the end of the day, it's more than just dollars and cents on a page, it's people's lives.
Okay. Just a couple of real quick items on the pandemic. Number one, should vaccines be mandatory? Abby Finkenauer?
Well, I think we need to listen to the experts. And so as we finally get a vaccine, which I know we are all hopeful for as soon as possible, we also need to make sure it's safe and that it goes through the proper channels as well. So that's something, obviously, I'd have to listen to the
Would you
experts
support
on.
or oppose a vaccine mandate?
I don't think we need a mandate. I think we need choice in that regard. We've seen, I think, that surface as a definite issue here, and people being empowered to take care of their health care during this challenging time. And I'd like to see that choice be up to the individual.
Angela Merkel in Germany required masks or face coverings in public. Do you think that the U.S. should have a face covering mandate in public, Ashley Hinson?
Well, what we've seen is a lot of local leaders stepping up and doing that, but everywhere I've been going, I wear a mask in public because I think it's the right thing for me to do to protect my family and my constituents. I think the local businesses have taken this into their own hands here in the state of Iowa. I don't know of a single business that I've gone into that hasn't already had a requirement that you wear a mask going in. I respect our local leaders in what they're trying to do, and if they have issued a mask mandate, I hope more people wear masks. They're not enforceable here in the state of Iowa, according to the Attorney General.
Another issue, Abby Finkenauer, facing our society today, and certainly that district, is the questions surrounding racial justice. How do you want to improve the racial climate in the United States?
Well, one of the things that we did, specifically following George Floyd's death, was start having really tough conversations. Quite frankly, conversations that I should have been having as a congresswoman a long time before then. So one of the things we did, we brought the Waterloo police chief together along with local leaders and activists and started having those conversations about what changes do we need to see. Specifically, things like bans on chokeholds when it comes to use of force policy. Actually, when we were having that conversation, the police chief was actually looking and updating his use of force as we were doing it. And on top of that, when it comes to racial justice and policing, it's more than just policing. It's about making sure that we have justice when it comes to health care. Black maternal health care, for example, is something that's been overlooked in our country for far too long, that I've been actually really happy to work with Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from Illinois on a number of issues, but also education and mental health. And that was one thing that I really got out of those conversations is, one, they should have happened a long time ago, and two, we've got a lot more work to do besides even just the racial justice part.
Ashley Hinson?
Yeah, we've had some very tough conversations here in the state of Iowa. We led on this issue nationwide by passing a bipartisan bill through both the House, the Senate, and the governor signed it in one day to address these issues. And they were uncomfortable conversations, but we stepped up as leaders in this state and had them. I'm 100% in favor of law enforcement, support law enforcement, and I'm 100% against police brutality. That is absolutely important, and we need to be clear on that. Ideas to defund the police in a time when we are experiencing some of these challenges throughout our communities, I think that's an absolutely radical idea. I don't support defunding the police. Congresswoman, I would ask if where you are on this issue, because we haven't heard a whole lot of out of you on this specifically, but I back law enforcement. I think we do need to have some tough conversations going forward, but absolutely I'm going to be at the table and ready to take action in Washington, D.C.
Well, first of all, no, I do not support defunding the police. In fact, I think right now we need to make sure there are enough funds there to have proper training. That's one of the bills also we worked on the federal level, the Justice in Policing Act. And I do want to say thank you to Representative Hinson for voting on the bill that went through the State House that I know the Black Caucus did an incredible job on, but I was really happy to see that day. It was one of those moments where I think we need to see more of that in government, of Democrats and Republicans getting together on something that we should be able to come together on as a country.
Okay. Abby Finkenauer, one of the charges being made against you is that you say you're for border security, but at the same time you voted against funding for construction of the border wall. And are you being hypocritical in playing both sides of this?
It's not both sides. I support securing our borders, and some of the best ways to do that is actually through technology. And here's the other thing. When we talk about our borders, it's not just our southern borders. It's our ports of entry as well that, quite frankly, haven't had the funding they should have for a very long time here. And it's one of those things where we need to make sure that we are cracking down on the drugs coming into our country, human trafficking as well, and one of the best ways to do that is actually investing in technology.
Ashley Hinson, everybody says they're for immigration reform. What are you going to do to make it happen? and what does it have to include?
Absolutely. Well, first thing I want to say is I do challenge you on that, Congresswoman, what you said about your support for not being hypocritical there, because you voted against the bill that made sanctuary cities illegal in the state of Iowa, and you also voted for an amendment that provided health care for illegal immigrants. I don't think you can do both.
What would you do?
Yes, and I'm going to get there. I think what I would do is I would first approach the H-1B visa program. I've talked to dozens of employers, small business owners in the district who I know need these reforms so they can grow and expand their businesses. What we've seen is a challenging pandemic that, obviously has thrown some curveballs to the growth we were seeing in this state and in this country. But boy, it was there before the pandemic. We're going to get there again. I know it, and I'm hopeful. I'm hearing that from small businesses. So that would be the first step that I would do. I would work on the H-1B visa reform. I also think we need to focus on our worker pipeline nationally, and that's a great partnership in making sure we can do that.
Do you care to respond to her question?
Well, look, when it comes to keeping our communities safe, I actually listened to our sheriffs and our police officers when it came to the bill that you are referencing. At the end of the day, they spoke to us, and we do not have sanctuary cities in Iowa. And they said that that bill that came up was going to cause so much fear in their communities that when there were folks who were scared or wanted to report something, that they wouldn't do it, and it would actually make things worse for their communities.
Next question, Kay.
Let's circle back to healthcare. And Abby Finkenauer, you didn't get to answer the mask mandate question, so let's just quickly cover that.
Yes. Well, again, we should listen to the experts, and the experts right now are suggesting that every single person wear a mask to cut down on the spread of this. And look, at the end of the day, I too want to go to football games, and I want to at ISU, and I want to, be able to have our businesses open and feel and have everybody feel safe, have our kids feel safe in schools. But at the end of the day, until we get this under control, and it's going to be a bit, even when we get a vaccine, we're still going to have to take precautions here as it's rolled out. And so, yes, we need to make sure that folks are being as safe as possible so we can get our economy back on track here and we can have our kids feeling safe in schools again.
Ashley Hinson, if the courts rule that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional, what would you replace it with?
I think we need targeted fixes and approaches, but I don't think we can repeal and replace unless we have a plan to cover pre-existing conditions. That's paramount to me. My aunt was she suffered from multiple myeloma for more than a decade before she passed away. So covering pre-existing conditions is absolutely a priority for me. It's very clear the Affordable Care Act is not doing what it intended to do, which was lower premiums for families. Here in Iowa, we haven't seen that happen, and across the country, they've more than doubled since 2013, and that's just unaffordable for Iowa families. They shouldn't be deciding between paying their health care and paying for food or medicine. So what I would like to see happen is targeted fixes on administrative cost, working on getting generic drugs to market faster. We don't need artificial caps on medication costs. We need to actually talk to these pharmaceutical companies so we can balance getting new drugs to market and make sure we get those life-saving medications researched, invested in safe ways to our consumers, but they also need to be affordable. So those are some of the targeted fixes that I'd like to work on.
Abby Finkenauer, in your party, you hear people talk about Medicare for all. You hear people talk about the public option, which is what your nominee, Joe Biden, has been an advocate of. And you also hear people who want a single payer system. What do you want?
I think we need to add a public option, fix the ACA, give folks an option to buy into like Medicare, where not only would that ensure that every single person in our country has health care they can afford, it also drives competition in the insurance marketplace as well to drive down premiums. And it also ensures that if you have coverage through your employer, you're able to keep it. And I think, again, one of the things, and it's quite frankly, one of the biggest issues we are seeing in this country, even through the pandemic, even through the Derecho in Iowa, is the fact that this administration is currently going after the ACA. This will put people out that have pre-existing conditions. There are 42,000 Iowans within the 1st Congressional District that have pre-existing conditions. And if this administration is successful, they're going to be paying more and, quite frankly, not be able to afford their coverage.
Abby Finkenauer, you've talked about repaying your student loans, that you still have college debt. President Trump has frozen the repayments until December. What can or should the next Congress do to address the student debt issue? Should it be forgiven? Should it be part of it written off? What sort of approach?
So student loan debt is actually something that I've worked on since I was in the State House. One of the ideas that we have and that we've been working on and have a bill coming out here shortly actually has to do with targeting forgiveness of student loans, looking at even population and how do we make sure that we are attracting more people to states like Iowa and to our towns that have actually lost population over the years. And it would actually be a targeted approach where you would qualify for forgiveness over an 8-year period, because studies show that if you're in an area for over 8 years, you're likely to stay. And so we can be really smart about how we do this and encourage employers to also match forgiveness as well and attract more people, attract talent. I have a lot of friends that I graduated high school with that moved away and want to come back home. They're in their 30s, getting married, having kids, and want to be able to find the opportunity, but at the same time are still paying off student loan debt, and we've got to give them options.
Same question to you.
Yeah, I don't believe in wiping away debt. It kind of devalues, I think, the people who've worked hard to save money and invest in their education. That said, also, college is not the choice for everyone, and I'm not going to ask somebody who's working a 12-hour shift to take money out of their paycheck to pay for somebody who didn't want to go to who's going to college when they didn't choose that path for themselves. So I don't believe in wiping it away. I think we do need to incentivize employers, much like they might pay for a graduate degree instead. Maybe that is a tool where they can write off some of that to incentivize employees to stay. I agree with that for the long term, but I do not believe in wiping away the debt. I think people need to be invested in their education. College maybe isn't the right choice for everybody, but we need to have those conversations before people borrow money for the long term.
Today we learned that 52% of young adults are still living with their parents. Some people point to income inequality and the difficulty in the job market currently. Ashley Hinson, how do you solve that problem? Do you raise the minimum wage? Do you change other policies?
Well, I think what we were seeing in this state was people in jobs in search of people up until March before the pandemic hit. And I believe we'll get there again. We've done our part here in the state of Iowa to incentivize good policies to create those jobs. We had people who were paying well above minimum wage just because they had to recruit people. So I believe in letting that free market play out. That's exactly where we need to be with the PPP and these other programs to help our businesses in the long term. They're going to survive. We're going to get more people into the workforce. That's exactly what we've done here in Iowa to set up good, solid policies over the last decade.
Abby Finkenauer?
Well, the last time we raised the minimum wage in Iowa was actually when I was in high school. So it's still $7.25 an hour. And in fact, I heard Representative Hinson talk about people having to pay over the minimum wage to attract people. I sure hope so. It's $7.25 an hour. You cannot raise a family on $7.25 an hour. The reality in our country is we've got people working 40 hours a week or over that who can't afford rent, who are struggling to be able to feed their families, who are working their tails off every single day and still can't catch up. And so one of the things we should be doing is, yes, looking at minimum wage, but also making sure that we don't interfere with localities raising minimum wage. In fact, Representative Hinson, you actually took away a wage increase for your own constituents. Lynn County voted to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, and then in the State House, you voted to undermine that, to say that they couldn't do it. The reality was the people on the ground, the local leaders, saw that folks needed to be able to compete, to be able to live their lives with dignity and respect and be able to work.
A $15 minimum wage is not the answer here either, and that's what you supported in Congress. That would put dozens of small businesses out of business. I've talked to many who say they employ people with disabilities because they can. They can't pay them $15 an hour. What you'll get is on this Labor Day, you'll have people out of work. You'll have people who are replaced by kiosks and machines. We've already seen that happen. A $15 minimum wage isn't the answer. We may need to raise the minimum wage a moderate amount, but it doesn't cost the same to live here in Iowa as it does in San Francisco or New York.
What do you do about family and medical leave policy at the federal level? Ashley Hinson.
Well, I believe in families having every option to be successful as possible. I myself have two beautiful children, Max and Jax. They're the reason why I'm stepping up to run for Congress. And I believe families need access to childcare, need access to that time off to be able to take care of their families.
Should it be a mandate at the federal level?
Well, I don't think we need a mandate. Employers are stepping up to do the right thing, but I think we can have partnerships where people can borrow from their 401k, for example, to be able to take that additional time off and have that resource available. I think there are a lot of creative solutions that we need to be looking at. A mandate, again, for employers, it just is an extra burden for them going forward.
What's your answer?
Yes, we need to make sure we're one of the last developed countries in the world that does not have paid family leave for folks who have children. And this is something I've also worked on since the State House. Heck, I was just trying to get at it. If you adopt a child, that you're able to get leave, and ran into headway after headway after headway because folks didn't like the fact that it would be a mandate. And at the end of the day, you're talking about people being able to bond and spend time with their children, and it's the least we could do as Iowans and, well, as Americans.
James?
In the Roe v. Wade decision 46 years ago, the Supreme Court legalized abortion, but the issue really has never been settled in this country. Ashley Hinson, you've been endorsed by groups that oppose abortion. What should Congress do to resolve this issue once and for all?
Well, first of all, I would say I am pro-life. I have 2 beautiful children, and I believe in protecting life. It's valuable, especially this year, what we've seen in our country. I think we need to be on the side of life. We give everybody a fighting chance. What I would like to see in Congress is both sides come together on a very contentious issue. We need to come together in the middle and make progress, so we're saving additional lives. Congresswoman Finkenauer wouldn't support a 20-week ban in the Iowa House of Representatives. That's almost 5 months of pregnancy, and in fact, her position is that I believe you would allow abortions all the way up to the end of pregnancy, and I think that's extreme.
What is your position?
I support Roe v. Wade as it currently stands, and I also know and believe that women's health care is complicated. It is not black and white, and at the end of the day, legislators do not belong in the doctor's offices of pregnant women.
What about the U.S. Postal Service? Many Republicans, Ashley Hinson, say it should be privatized. Do you believe it should be privatized?
I think I value the postal workers that are out there every day sending our election mail and dealing with our absentee ballots. I don't think we need to privatize it. I think we need to look for as many efficiencies as possible. I know that the postmaster has said he believes he's finding those efficiencies and trying to make sure that they can process all the mail that's going through and make sure they're being effective in doing so. I have faith in the Postal Service to do that, and I know that there's been a lot of question about handling the absentee ballots going forward. The absentee ballot mail is only a fraction of the mail that the post office sees on any given day. And so I have full confidence that they'll be able to execute our election and get our ballots in and counted.
And it also sounds as if you are okay with the changes that the new Postmaster General has made.
Well, I think we need to be across government looking for efficiencies. Our government has spending problems. We have problems with additional bureaucracies that just get in the way of getting things done for taxpayers. That's what I'm in favor of, is trying to find solutions that get the job done and respect the taxpayers, the hardworking taxpayers of the state of Iowa. That's who I'm fighting for, the workers who are every day sending their check to the state of Iowa and to the federal government saying, I want you to be efficient with my money. That's what I support.
Abby Finkenauer, why shouldn't the federal government look at ways to make the Postal Service more efficient?
Well, it absolutely should not be privatized, as it's actually in part of our founding as a country that we have a postal service, that no matter where you live in this country, that you're able to receive mail. And that's more important than ever right now, especially as folks are relying on mail for their prescription drugs, for example, which I know, given the changes that this postmaster had made, actually slowed things down. In fact, in Waterloo, they took out sorting machines. I know that made national news. It shouldn't be like this. We're talking about the post office. I mean, and right now, I mean, especially our mail carriers deserve more respect than ever before. Heck, after the Derecho, one of the mail carriers that I have, I spoke to him because he was the first person that really saw people after the storm. And I asked him, you know, what are you hearing out there? And he said, well, I delivered insulin to one woman and I knew she didn't have anything to keep it cold, so I went and got her a generator. I mean, that's how essential the Postal Service is.
James?
Abby Finkenauer, the ethanol industry has been hammered by the pandemic, and there's less travel. The market has collapsed pretty much, as well as the small refinery waivers. What is it that you can do on this issue that Senators Ernst and Grassley haven't been able to achieve with the Republican administration?
the attack on the renewable fuel industry is one of the biggest things facing our farmers and rural America that we have right now. It has been devastating for our corn growers. I know with the amount of refinery waivers that this administration has issued, it has cost us actually 4 billion bushels of corn out of production, and up until the Derecho hit, it actually dropped our corn prices to the lowest they've been in a decade. And so one of the things we did is actually work bicamerally and bipartisanly to ask for an investigation into why the administration was asking for these, why the EPA was granting them the way that they were, and GAO is currently looking into that. But what we're finding out even this week is that the EPA has not been as forthcoming as they should be. So we're going to continue to have our farmers' backs on this every chance we get. One of the things we do constantly actually is called the White House liaisons, and make sure that they're hearing the stories we're hearing. Look, we've got farmers dipping into their 401ks if they're lucky enough to have one. My brother and sister-in-law, or my sister and brother-in-law are corn and soybean farmers. They've got a bin full of beans that are worth 50K less.
Besides studying this, what can Congress do? Well,
again, the investigation is one of them, and you have to hold these agencies accountable. So at the end of the day, it's the EPA and it's the president who asked for the last round of them. And
yes, absolutely. We need more transparency on the waiver process in general, and that's what I would do in Congress. I would file immediately a bill that puts that transparency on the process. I think what we would see out of some of these refineries that are applying for the waivers to begin with is that they are subsidiaries of bigger oil companies, and absolutely we need to stand up for our renewable fuel standard. I know Senator Ernst, the president literally called her relentless at the roundtable that we were out at together, as she continues to hammer home this issue that it's important to protect our renewable fuel standards. So we need to put transparency on the waivers. And additionally, I think as we're looking at relief going forward from the derecho, we've got a grain bin problem here in the state of Iowa. Our farmers can't store the grain that they may or may not be able to harvest this year. So I think we need to take a look at both of those issues to help make sure the ethanol industry can bounce back.
One of the selling points of ethanol is that it's better for the environment than gasoline. So as a tool to combat climate change, first, do we agree that climate change is real? Ashley Hinson?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so as a tool to combat that, ethanol would be one. Is a carbon tax a viable option? Would it be good for Iowa farmers, or would it be destructive?
No, what we need to be looking at is actually making sure we're supporting the things that Iowans do well. We lead on solar, we lead on wind, and we lead on renewables.
But would a carbon tax help?
At this point, again, we need to be doing what actually works and what we know has worked here in Iowa.
You know what
Carbon
works?
tax?
I don't support a carbon tax. I don't think that's the right solution. I think what we've done here in Iowa is a model for the rest of the country. Public-private partnerships to make sure we're doing the right thing to protect our environment. Our farmers have stepped up. Water quality has improved in this state. We partnered with the legislature, and I've been out to see those projects in motion to actually see them measuring from the input to the output, point and source testing to make sure we're actually reducing the amount of nitrates and nitrites in our water and phosphates. I mean, we are doing the right thing here in Iowa, and I think we're ready to step up. Iowans are ready to step up to take care of our environment.
I want to change gears. We got way too many questions and not enough time. You're both very good about you're keeping your answers short. But China, Ashley Hinson, what do we do about China? Mm-hmm. You know, we have to sell goods to them, yet they're stealing our secrets. So how do you, as a federal lawmaker, propose to deal with this?
Yeah. China's been a bad actor for years. We all know that. There was a Chinese national discovered right here in the state of Iowa stealing seeds and try to take them back to China so they could reverse engineer them.
But they're a great customer.
They are, but you know, we can also be tough on China. We can send a clear message that we're not going to tolerate this security issue. They just launched today, China did, their own data security program that they want to try to undermine what we're trying to do to protect our intellectual property. So we need to rehome as many jobs as we can. In Congress, I think that's our job, is to make sure we're providing incentives to businesses to bring those jobs back home from China. And we do need to be tough with them on trade. Our farmers that I've been talking to, they say it's about time somebody held them accountable. We're going to keep doing that. And I think we can do that in a way where we still have a trade relationship.
Finkenauer, what do you do about China?
Well, there was no question that China needed to be held accountable when it came to trade, when it came to intellectual property. But the way that this administration has done it, with alienating our allies, not going into this trade war with allies, with more leverage, has put Iowa at the target center of who's been hurt the most. Initially, when the president issued those steel tariffs back in, I believe it was April of 2018, it was a month and a half later that China came back with corn, pork, and soybean tariffs. And we kept being told here in Iowa, short-term pain, long-term gain. We are way past that. And it's to the point now as well where I'd also like to, if you don't mind, David, I know Representative Hinson talked about bringing more jobs back home. I couldn't agree more. In fact, it's why in Congress I worked very hard to pass a bill and add it to our infrastructure bill to close the fund swap loophole that Representative Hinson voted for that would allow our communities to essentially wash federal dollars that have Made in America and Davis-Bacon provisions on them that would allow Chinese steel into our communities and lower paying jobs.
Ashley Hinson, your response.
I've checked with the DOT on this. None of the projects so far in Iowa are even using Chinese steel. And what this did was allow taxpayers to get basically 5 bridges for the price of 4. And I have faith in our county engineers. I have faith that our local DOT is executing this and making sure Iowans are getting the best deal and able to have the infrastructure and the bridges safely that they need here to
Did you or did you not open the loophole to allow Chinese steel on our roads and our bridges here in Iowa and allow for
I
lower
allowed
wages?
our local DOT to make the decisions on executing these projects so that they could get more projects, more bang for the taxpayer dollars. That's exactly what I said.
Let's make this a broader question. It's a rural district, as all districts really are in Iowa. Ashley Hinson, why would you be the best member of Congress for rural Iowa?
My family has roots in manufacturing. Hinson Manufacturing Products was my grandparents' company. They manufactured products for the road, products for farmers, products for a number of different entities and businesses. And so I understand the needs of rural Iowa because many of those rural Iowans bought products from my grandparents' company for decades. We absolutely need to listen to rural Iowa. I've been through all 20 counties. I've been in 14 counties in the last 14 days listening to rural Iowans tell their stories. And what I'm hearing is that small business matters. They need the tools and the resources to be able to get the government out of their way and continue to expand and grow their businesses. That's why we need to focus on rural Iowa.
Abby Finkenauer, why would you be the best bet for rural America?
Well, I grew up in rural America. I grew up in Sherrill, a little bit north of Dubuque. It's a small town that I like to say has more cows than people. And when the administration has gone after renewable fuels, for example, or we've continued to feel the hurt from the trade war, it quite literally is my friends, family, and neighbors that are being affected. And I also know that when and how we come out of this pandemic is going to depend a lot on who we have sitting in Congress and what their priorities are. And my priorities are going to be making sure that we get a large infrastructure package done that's actually going to invest in our communities, create jobs in rural America, help fix the 1,000 structurally deficient bridges we have in the 1st Congressional District alone that our farmers rely on.
You voted against in the Iowa House the funding mechanism that would have helped contribute to those projects. The 380 expansion and the Highway 30 extension, all those projects might not have happened because you voted against the fuel tax, the very thing that you said you wanted to support infrastructure, and you ran on that 2 years ago. So the fact that nothing's gotten done, I think, is indicative of the problems in Congress. We've seen Congresswoman Finkenauer vote with Nancy Pelosi 93% of the time. And I think that just shows that Congress is broken, Washington is broken, and we need new leadership.
You want to respond to that?
Well, I like that she's bringing up voting percentages. As you voted with your party in Des Moines nearly 100% of the time. And as it's Labor Day, I think it's important to remind folks that some of those votes were to gut collective bargaining in our state that went after our teachers, our corrections officers, our bus drivers, folks who are just working their tails off, trying to provide for their families, and you went out of your way to make their lives harder. It's actually part of the reason I ran for Congress in the first place, because I got tired of hardworking men and women seeing their government step in and make their life harder when it shouldn't have to be that way. And that's, again, it's part of my values. It's how I grew up. And again, I question quite a bit of your votes in Des Moines.
Let's air this out a little bit. What do you say?
Most of those votes were bipartisan, actually. Almost 90% of them here in the state of Iowa in the legislature were bipartisan. The collective bargaining bill, I think, was a great bill to protect Iowa taxpayers and give them a seat at the table. It was important because it was unbalanced and it had gone in favor of labor unions. And so when I look at that bill and what we did to protect Iowa taxpayers, I think it was a great policy piece. I think one of the things that the Congresswoman is forgetting was also in that bill is a provision to hold bad actors accountable so that they can't resign and then move on to another job.
What would you say to that?
I would say now let's do workers' compensation, where you voted to make it harder for folks who are working 40 hours a week, working their tails off, who get hurt on the job, to get the fair compensation they deserve. That too was one of the bills that I saw quite personally to me, as my dad, again, was one of the building trades members who his body got wrecked over the years. And the changes that were made in that law were so disrespectful to the people who put their bodies on the line every single day.
Iowa has almost the richest benefits in the country, and I think one thing we did was just make sure that they were in line with, there were a lot of provisions in that bill that laid out specific injuries and what should be paid out for them. You don't want, you talk about cost in the healthcare system, you want to make sure someone is absolutely given the resources they need to recover from the injury that they've experienced, but it needs to, again, be balanced in the process.
Ashley Hinson, you mentioned the state gas tax. Did you support raising the gas tax in the state of Iowa?
I would, yes. I was not in the legislature at the time. I supported what they did because it absolutely needed to happen at the time to make sure that our roads and bridges were properly taken care of and our Iowans could drive safely on the road.
As a member of Congress, would you vote to raise the federal gas tax, or would you establish some sort of per mileage fee?
Well, the commercial industry is already doing a per mileage fee, and I think that's a great model for vehicles going forward. What I've heard from people is they don't like the government overreach into knowing exactly how many miles that they're driving and where they're going. I think that's what people are concerned about. So I would want to be mindful of that before I supported anything at the federal level. But I do think we need to be serious about infrastructure and how we're going to pay for those projects. Our government has a spending problem.
Finkenauer, same question.
Well, we have got to pass a large infrastructure bill. It's one we actually did again through the House. We're still waiting on the Senate to come together with the president. And my philosophy has been, I will have anything on the table when it comes to the pay-fors. We have to make sure that we get this done. It is the best return on investment we have in America when you spend dollars on infrastructure. What that means for our communities, how that goes back to good paying jobs. It's just something, again, that I am willing to entertain any and all ideas of how we get it done, because it's too important not to.
James. Ashley Hinson, some of your colleagues and the Republican colleagues in the legislature supported changes which they referred to as welfare reform. If you were elected to Congress, what sort of welfare reform would you vote for at the federal level? Would you have drug testing for welfare recipients? Would you require work?
Well, I think looking for work is the utmost way to lift yourself out of welfare. We've already taken steps here in Iowa in the Iowa House to focus on child care and getting people off the child care cliff. So we are looking at all of those solutions to help lift people out of poverty. That's the best solution. I don't think drug testing in other states, it has shown that it is actually more expensive to administer those programs than the number of people you catch. So I'm not sure that that's the answer, but I do think we need to be looking at efficiencies in those programs and finding fraud also, because fraud is a problem.
Abby Finkenauer, same question.
Well, at the end of the day, I know I talk to a lot of Iowans who are struggling, who, again, have been working hard. And a lot of those folks are in our essential workforce, who are in the healthcare industry, CNAs, for example, whose wages are not high enough and then end up needing extra assistance. And so we need to make sure, one, that we can help folks lift themselves out of poverty, yes, but part of the way we do that is looking at wages, making sure that they have opportunity, and also looking at career opportunities when it comes to training, and making sure that we have that available.
James.
Let's talk about the national debt. It's reaching World War II proportions or levels. It's exceeding the gross domestic product. Should we be worried, Abby Finkenauer, and what steps should we be taking to address this? Reduce spending, increase taxation, other options?
Well, I'm concerned about it as well, especially when 2 years ago, I know the bill passed through the U.S. House and Senate, and the president signed it, that added $2 trillion to our deficit, helping those at the very top and really leaving our working families behind. And so one of the things I would make sure is that any tax policy that's looked at doesn't put it on the backs of working families and actually make sure that folks pay their fair share. And we look at things like closing the carried interest loophole. And we also look at cutting big breaks that the oil industry gets. It's one of, unfortunately, this administration's favorite constituents, I think, given how much they've thrown our farmers under the bus for big oil, and that would be one of the things I would absolutely change as soon as we have a Senate and a president that agrees.
May I answer?
Yes.
So I think our federal government obviously has a spending problem. That's why we're in this predicament in the first place. Lawmakers before have clearly not paid attention to how we do things here in Iowa, where we spend less money than we take in. And that's my philosophy for government in general. I would support zero-based budgeting to make sure that we're being respectful to taxpayers, and departments actually have to justify why they need what they need. Congress has failed in oversight of many of these programs over the years, and that's something that I would personally task myself with taking action on, is making sure that we're being smart with our budgeting so that we don't contribute to pile this debt on. I have 2 children, 7 and 9, and I don't want to see their future negatively impacted, so I'm ready to go to bat for them and other Iowa families.
No matter which one of you wins this race, you'll be the only millennial from Iowa in the Congress. So that said, and I'll start with you, Ashley Hinson, what do we do in this state to attract and keep younger Iowans here? It's a question that has vexed Iowans, well, really since about 1920 when our population started to drop. But the torch is being passed here, so what do we do differently in this state?
Well, I was born and raised in central Iowa. I'm an example of that, where I am a millennial who left the state of Iowa and decided to come back here to work. I love this state, and I realized very quickly, living elsewhere, how great we really have it here. So I think we've done some things to lead on this issue here in Iowa. I'm proud to have supported Future Ready Iowa, which will help pair people with the jobs they need, provide those resources, and team people up with the training that they need to be successful here and have a great career. I think there was a great marketing initiative by the state of Iowa in other cities like in New York, where they showed how affordable it is to live here. We absolutely need to be encouraging people to come to Iowa. You can have it all here, and that's absolutely the direction we should go, both with policy and encouraging people to come here.
I'll be thinking our same question. What do we do differently?
Yeah, so I chair the Rural Development, Agriculture, Trade, and Entrepreneurship Subcommittee on the Small Business Committee. And I've really used that as a space to focus on the ideas of how do you get people to, one, stay in Iowa, stay in our rural communities, but also get them to come back home. And some of the things we focused on that is childcare, for example. We were able, actually, through the House, to pass a $50 billion childcare stabilization fund that is obviously needed through this pandemic, but also get creative ideas of how our businesses are stepping up as well, how we can aid in those partnerships to make sure that childcare is available. And it's not just available, it's quality and it's affordable, right? Right now we know we have that issue all across the country, but here in Iowa as well.
Okay.
We don't have much time left. Ashley Hinson, should the U.S. Constitution be changed to impose term limits on members of Congress? If not, would you support just voluntarily term limiting yourself?
I would absolutely support term limits in Congress. What that number needs to be, I think, is a discussion for Congress and the Senate to have. But I think absolutely we have people who are becoming career politicians and forget what it's like to serve Iowans. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm the wife of a small business owner, and I will never let it be lost on me how important my role and my duty is there.
Do you personally take any kind of term limits pledge?
Sure. I mean, I don't know what the limit needs to be, but I'll absolutely, I don't plan to do this forever.
Abby Finkenauer?
You know, I don't think there should be anything under the Constitution to do it, but I think it is a discussion we should be having in our country, especially as we see the different experience of Congress. I think it is important to have new voices and to be able to have new ideas in both the Democratic and the Republican Party as well. But at the same time, I think experience is also important, and being able to get things done and knowing how the process works. But the way I look at serving is I'm going to serve for as long as it is necessary for me to serve, or I feel as though I'm adding something. If you're not adding something, you should get out.
We've got 2 minutes left, and I'll try to split it between the two of you. What are we left? As voters go into the voting booth or sit down to mark their absentee ballot this year, Ashley Hinson, what do you most want them to remember about you?
Well, I think, number one, I would say this election is about choices, and Congress is clearly failing us. Abby Finkenauer votes with Nancy Pelosi 93% of the time. The partisan rhetoric, the infighting, it's unacceptable to me, and I know it's unacceptable to the voters in Iowa's 1st District. So what I bring to the table is I'm ready to go to bat for Iowa families. I'm ready to go to bat for our hard workers in this state of Iowa who are just tired of the government trying to take more and more out of their paycheck. I'm ready to go to bat for the healthcare workers and the patients who want to give the best care and get the best care. And most importantly, and I hope I've made it clear here today, that I will fight for Iowa taxpayers. That is my #1 care. I will never forget who I work for. Congress has failed us and is failing us, and it's time for new leadership, people who can build consensus and get things done, and that's what I'm going to do.
Abby Finkenauer, what do you want them to remember about you?
Well, that I grew up here in Iowa, that I come from a family that taught me that when there's work to be done, you say yes, and then you do it. And that's what I've tried to do in Congress. In the first 2 weeks, I passed a bipartisan bill to help our small businesses. I then have since introduced over 20 bipartisan bills, including permanently funding the children's health insurance program so it stops being used as a political football, extending the biodiesel tax credit that helps not just our renewable fuel industry, but also our farmers, making it so that we can attract more doctors to Iowa, and investments in rural infrastructure, for example. And look, there's a lot of people who say, okay, you talk about the bipartisan work, but is that really happening in DC? And I tell them my day is very different than what you see on TV at night. It doesn't matter what you're watching, CNN or Fox. My day is different because I believe that there is absolutely more power in unity than division, and that we got to get things done.
And I have to wrap things up. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you,
Good luck to
Kay.
good luck to you
Thanks,
both
James.
on the
Thanks,
trail.
Kay.
Thank you.
And a quick reminder, tonight was the first of a full slate of Iowa Press debates on statewide Iowa PBS. Coming up on Thursday, September 24th, we'll host our 2nd Congressional District debate with Democrat Rita Hart and Republican Marionette Miller-Meeks. On Monday, September 28th, we'll welcome candidates in Iowa's U.S. Senate race, Democrat Teresa Greenfield and Republican Joni Ernst. And then on Monday, October 5th, we'll host 3rd Congressional District candidates, Democrat Cindy Axne and Republican David Young. For our hard-working Iowa Press crew here in Johnston, I'm David Yepsen, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Funding for Iowa Press was provided by Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation, the Associated General Contractors of Iowa, the public's partner in building Iowa's highway, bridge, and municipal utility infrastructure.
Iowa PBS is supported in part by Wells Fargo. Fuel Iowa is a voice and a resource for Iowa's fuel industry. Our members offer a diverse range of products, including fuel, grocery, and convenience items. They help keep Iowans on the move in rural and urban communities. Together, we fuel Iowa.
I'm a dad.
I am a mom.
I'm a kid.
I'm a kid at heart. I'm a banker.
I'm an Iowa banker.
No matter who you are, there is an Iowa banker who is ready to help you get where you want to go. Iowa Bankers, allowing you to discover the genuine difference of Iowa banks.